I need to tell you about the moment everything changed. The moment I realized my own son had been playing a long game with my life, my money, and my trust. And it all came down to a single voicemail he never meant to send me. I was sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd raised him, where I'd packed his school lunches for 12 years, where I'd celebrated every milestone of his life. I was drinking my morning coffee, scrolling through my phone, when I saw the notification. Voicemail from my son. I smiled. He usually texted, so a call felt special, personal. I pressed play. What I heard in those 47 seconds destroyed 39 years of motherhood. His voice was casual, laughed even, talking to someone in the background. He thought he'd hung up. He hadn't. And in that accidental recording, I heard him say words that still make my hands shake when I think about them. I just need to keep her happy for another few years, maybe less if we're lucky. Then we're set. The house alone is worth over 600 grand. If we're lucky. If I died soon, he meant. If his mother, the woman who'd given him life, stopped breathing, he'd be set. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I just sat there, coffee getting cold in my hands, listening to that message 3 more times. 4 times. 5. Each time hoping I'd misheard. Each time hearing the exact same thing. I hung up. I opened my laptop. And I scheduled an appointment with an estate attorney for the next available slot. 2 weeks later, my daughter-in-law was crying in my driveway, begging me to reconsider what I'd done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you want to understand how a mother's love can turn into the clearest, coldest boundary you've ever seen, stay with me. Because this story doesn't end where you think it does. And before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had someone you loved treat you like a retirement plan instead of a person. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Because some days, that's exactly how I feel. Let me take you back 8 years. That's when my husband died, and that's when I had to figure out who I was without him. We'd been married for 41 years. 41 years of shared decisions, shared meals, shared dreams. When he had his heart attack, sudden, no warning, just gone, I thought I'd fall apart. Everyone expected me to. My son certainly did. He swooped in immediately, talking about how I shouldn't be alone, how I'd need help, how he'd be there for everything. And for the first few months, I believed I needed that. I believed I was fragile. Breakable. Lost. But somewhere around month 6, something shifted. I was in the garage, looking for something, and I found my husband's toolbox. He'd always been the one to fix things. I'd never even opened that box. But there was a leaky faucet in the kitchen that had been dripping for weeks, and I was tired of hearing it. Tired of waiting for someone else to care enough to fix it. So I Googled how to fix a faucet. I watched 3 YouTube videos. And I fixed the damn thing myself. It sounds small, doesn't it? Stupid, even. But standing there in my kitchen, watching that faucet not drip for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt since my husband died. Power. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't broken. I was just learning. So I kept learning. I took over the finances completely, something my husband had always handled. I learned about investments, about interest rates, about estate planning. I joined a watercolor painting class at the community center. I started volunteering at the library every Tuesday morning. I made friends, real friends, not just people I knew through my husband. I rebuilt myself. And I thought my son was proud of me. I really did. He'd come over for dinner and comment on a new painting I'd done. He'd ask about my volunteer work. He'd tell his friends, "My mom's incredible. You should see how she's handled everything." I glowed under that praise. I thought it meant he saw me as strong. I didn't realize he was just tracking my capability to manage assets. My son, I'll call him Daniel because I'm not ready to say his real name yet, even now, Daniel was the kind of son other mothers envied. That's what I thought, anyway. He called every Sunday like clockwork. Never missed a birthday. Showed up for every holiday with his wife and kids, arms full of gifts and smiles. He was involved in his community, coached his daughter's soccer team, volunteered at the food bank twice a month. People would tell me all the time, "You raised him right. He's such a good man. You must be so proud." And I was. God, I was so proud. He'd bring the kids over every other weekend. We had rituals, Saturday morning pancakes, walks in the park, movie nights where we'd make popcorn the old-fashioned way on the stove. My grandchildren adored me. I adored them. Daniel and his wife would sit at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, telling me about their lives. It all felt so normal. So healthy. So, right. I never noticed that every conversation eventually circled back to my house, my health, my plans for the future. I never noticed that he always seemed to know exactly how much money I had in my accounts. I never noticed that he'd positioned himself as the person everyone in the family turned to about Mom's situation. What situation? I was fine. I was healthy. I was 73 years old and still doing yoga 3 mornings a week, still driving myself everywhere, still managing a household and a life. But to Daniel, I was apparently a situation that needed managing. And I had no idea. The help started so innocently. Daniel and his wife were buying their first house. This was years ago, back when my husband was still alive. They were $20,000 short on the down payment. They'd tried everything, they said. Loans, savings, waiting. But the market was hot and they were going to lose the house. My husband and I talked about it for maybe 10 minutes before we agreed. This was our son. This was family. We gave them the $20,000. They promised to pay it back. We told them not to worry about it. That was our first mistake. 2 years after my husband died, Daniel's business had a rough quarter. He needed $15,000 to cover payroll or he'd have to let people go. Just a bridge loan, Mom. I'll pay you back with interest in 60 days. I gave him the money. 60 days came and went. I never asked about it. He never mentioned it. Then there was the medical emergency. His daughter needed oral surgery not covered by insurance. $8,000. I'll set up a payment plan, Mom, I promise. Then the car accident. Insurance didn't cover everything. $6,000. Then a business investment opportunity that was too good to pass up. $25,000. Then another investment. $30,000. I started keeping track at some point. Not because I wanted the money back, but because some small, quiet voice in the back of my mind was asking, when did my son become someone who always needed rescuing? Over 6 years, I'd given Daniel, or loaned him, though we both knew better, over $120,000. Let me say that again. $120,000. And here's the thing that makes my stomach turn even now, I didn't mind. I thought that's what the money was for. I thought I was helping him build his life. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought generosity built bridges. I was wrong. Generosity built dependency. And dependency built resentment. And resentment built entitlement. And entitlement turned my son into someone I don't recognize anymore. The first crack in the facade came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I'd stopped by Daniel's house to drop off some books for my granddaughter. She was reading above her grade level, something I was endlessly proud of, and I'd found a whole series at a library sale that I knew she'd love. Daniel wasn't home, but his wife was. We chatted in the kitchen while the kids played in the backyard. Normal stuff. Easy conversation. Then her phone rang. She glanced at it, apologized, and stepped into the other room to take the call. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. The kitchen was right next to the hallway. I could hear everything. No, we can't make that payment this month, she was saying, voice tense. We already told you, we're waiting on something to come through. No, I can't give you a specific date. Look, my husband's mother has been helping us, but we can't ask for more right now, she's already given us. She stopped mid-sentence. I heard footsteps. When she came back into the kitchen, her face was flushed. Everything okay? I asked lightly. Oh, yeah. Just billing stuff. You know how it is. I smiled. Nodded. Stayed for 10 more minutes, then left. But driving home, that conversation played on repeat in my mind. 3 months earlier, Daniel had told me he needed $8,000 for his daughter's oral surgery. Emergency situation. Couldn't wait. But I'd just heard his wife on the phone talking about not being able to make a payment. Not about medical debt. About something else entirely. I got home and did something I'd never done before. I went through my bank statements and matched every transfer to Daniel against the reason he'd given me. The oral surgery money had been transferred 2 weeks before his daughter's procedure. But the procedure cost was covered by a payment plan through the dentist's office. I'd seen the paperwork myself when I'd gone with them to the appointment. So where did my $8,000 go? The business investment he'd pitched 6 months prior, the one that was too good to pass up, I couldn't find any record of. No business filings. No partnership agreements. Nothing. I sat at my kitchen table with 8 years of bank statements spread in front of me, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. My son had been lying to me. Not about everything. But about enough. I didn't confront him. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared of what I'd find if I pulled that thread. Maybe I was hoping I was wrong. Instead, I just started watching more carefully. And once you start looking for something, you see it everywhere. Like the way Daniel always steered conversations toward my estate planning. Have you updated your will recently, Mom? Have you thought about what you want to happen to the house? Do you have everything organized? I'd hate for things to be complicated when, someday. When I die, he meant. When I was no longer here to ask uncomfortable questions. Or the way he'd casually bring up how much my house had appreciated in value. Mom, houses in this neighborhood are selling for crazy amounts now. Mrs. Patterson's place went for almost $700,000. Yours is bigger. You're probably sitting on $750,000. At the time, I thought he was just making conversation. Now I realize he was calculating. Or the way he'd suggest, so gently, so carefully, that I might want to think about downsizing. Not because you can't handle this place, Mom, you're amazing. But wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be nice to have less to worry about? Less to manage, he meant. More liquid assets he could access. But the moment that really opened my eyes came about 3 months before the voicemail. Daniel invited me to dinner. Just the two of us, he said. Special occasion, no occasion, really, he just wanted to spend time together. We went to a nice restaurant. He ordered a bottle of wine. We talked about the grandkids, about his business, about my painting class. Then, halfway through the meal, he said something that made my fork freeze halfway to my mouth. Mom, I've been thinking. Your finances are getting complicated. You've got investments, the house, retirement accounts, all these different things. I've been talking to a financial advisor, really sharp guy, helped me optimize everything, and I think you should meet with him. I have a financial advisor, I said carefully. I know, but this guy specializes in estate planning and wealth transfer. He could help you, structure things so they're more tax efficient. Especially if we're thinking long term. What do you mean by U.S.? He smiled. That patient, gentle smile. I just mean your family, Mom. Making sure everything's organized. Making sure you're protected. Protected from what? From. I don't know. Scams. Bad investments. People who might take advantage. I put my fork down. Daniel, I'm 73, not senile. I know that. God, Mom, I'm not saying you're not capable. I'm just saying it might be easier if we simplified things. Maybe combined some accounts. Set up some joint management. That way if something happens, not that it will, but if it does, everything's already in place. There it was. Joint management. Joint access. He wanted his name on my accounts. I'll think about it, I said. We finished dinner. He paid. We hugged goodbye in the parking lot. And I drove home feeling like I'd just been in a business negotiation with a stranger. The voicemail came 3 weeks later. Sunday morning. I was watering my tomato plants in the backyard, enjoying the quiet. My phone was in my pocket. I felt it buzz, saw Daniel's name, but my hands were dirty, so I didn't answer. The voicemail notification popped up a minute later. I washed my hands, poured a fresh cup of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and pressed play. And my world ended. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's getting harder to keep up the, hey, hold on. Rustling sounds. Movement. He was talking to someone else in the room, not into the phone. He thought he'd hung up. He hadn't. No, she's fine, she's healthy as hell, honestly. Which is good and bad, you know. I mean, good because she's my mom and I want her healthy. But bad because I just need to keep her happy for another few years, maybe less if we're lucky. Then we're set. The house alone is worth over 600 grand, plus she's got at least another 300 in retirement accounts, probably more. I've been laying groundwork, getting her used to the idea of joint planning, but she's stubborn. I don't know if she'll. A voice in the background, muffled. His wife, I think. Yeah, I know. I'll figure it out. I always do. She trusts me. That's all that matters. Anyway, I gotta go, I'll call you later. Click. End of voicemail. I sat there, phone in my hand, unable to move. I listened to it again. And again. And again. Keep her happy for another few years, maybe less if we're lucky. If we're lucky. Lucky if I died. My son, my only child, the baby I'd carried for 9 months, the boy I'd nursed through every fever and failure and fear, was waiting for me to die so he could cash in. And he'd been laying groundwork. Manipulating me. Managing me. I wasn't his mother. I was his inheritance. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. I didn't clean it up. I just sat there, staring at the pieces, feeling like something inside me had shattered just as completely. I didn't call him. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry, not then. I opened my laptop, searched for estate attorneys in my area, and booked the first available appointment. It was 2 days away. I spent those 2 days moving through my life like a ghost, going through the motions, functioning on autopilot. Daniel called that Sunday for our usual weekly check-in. I answered. Kept my voice normal. Asked about the kids. Laughed at his stories. And when he asked how I was doing, I said, I'm fine, sweetheart. Everything's fine. He had no idea. The attorney's office was in a downtown building I'd driven past 1,000 times but never entered. Professional. Quiet. The kind of place where serious things happened. The attorney, a woman in her 50s named Margaret, listened to my story without interrupting. I played her the voicemail. Showed her my bank statements. Explained the pattern of requests, the lies, the manipulation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Mrs. Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Are you doing this out of anger, or are you doing this to protect yourself? I thought about that. Really thought about it. Both, I finally said. Is that wrong? No, she said. That's honest. And honestly? What you've described is financial elder abuse. It might not look like the stereotypical version, there's no violence, no threats, but what your son is doing is absolutely a form of abuse. He's manipulating you, lying to you, and planning to exploit your death for financial gain. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What are my options? I asked. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. First, we remove him from any and all accounts, documents, or legal instruments where he currently has access or authority. Medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, bank accounts, investment accounts, everything. Second, we revise your will and estate plan entirely. Third, we create protective structures, trusts, healthcare directives, financial safeguards, that make it impossible for him to challenge your competency or claim undue influence later. And fourth, we document everything. Every conversation, every request, every interaction. Because I guarantee you, when he realizes what you've done, he's going to fight back. How hard? I asked. She looked at me with something like pity. As hard as he can. People don't react well when their anticipated inheritance disappears. He's my son, I whispered. I know, she said gently. That's what makes this so painful. But Mrs. Harrison, protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And frankly, it sounds like it's overdue. We spent the next 3 hours going through every document I had. Every account. Every policy. Every piece of paper with my name on it. By the time I left that office, Daniel's name had been systematically removed from my entire financial life. He just didn't know it yet. It took 2 weeks for him to notice. I'd been careful not to change my behavior. Still answered his Sunday calls. Still asked about the grandkids. Still played the role of the loving, trusting mother. But behind the scenes, I was building walls. I changed every password. Updated every security question. Added 2-factor authentication to every account. I notified my bank that no one, absolutely no one, had authorization to access my information except me. I scheduled appointments with my doctor to document my physical and mental health. I wanted a paper trail proving I was sound, capable, and acting with full awareness of what I was doing. And then I waited. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Mom, hey, quick question. Daniel's voice was casual, but I could hear the edge underneath. I was trying to check on that investment account, the one we talked about maybe consolidating, and it says I don't have access anymore. Is there a technical issue or something? My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. No technical issue. I updated my account settings. Pause. Why would you do that? Because they're my accounts, Daniel. I'm managing my own affairs. But I've always had access. Just in case something happened, you know? For emergencies. What kind of emergency would require you to access my money without my knowledge or consent? Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, what's going on? Did someone say something to you? Are you upset about something? And there it was. The implication that I was being influenced. That I wasn't thinking clearly. That I needed him to explain my own decisions to me. I'm not upset, I said, and it was technically true. I wasn't upset. I was devastated. Betrayed. Furious. But not upset. I'm simply taking responsibility for my own financial planning. You've been very helpful over the years, but I think it's time I handle things independently. This doesn't make sense. Why now? What changed? Everything changed, I wanted to scream. You changed. Or maybe you were always this person and I just didn't want to see it. But what I said was, Daniel, I appreciate your concern, but this isn't a discussion. These are my accounts and my decisions. I'll let you know if I need anything. Mom. I have to go. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit down. That was the first crack. The first moment he realized something fundamental had shifted. And I knew, I absolutely knew, that this was just the beginning. 3 days later, he showed up at my house unannounced. I saw his car pull into the driveway through the kitchen window. My stomach dropped. I considered not answering the door, but that would only delay the inevitable. He knocked. I waited a few seconds, then opened the door. Daniel. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, Mom. His face was tight. Controlled. Can I come in? Every instinct screamed at me to say no. But this was still my son. Or the man who used to be my son. I wasn't sure anymore. I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, but he didn't sit down. Just stood there, arms crossed. What's going on with you? He asked. No preamble. No gentle lead-in. I don't know what you mean. The accounts, Mom. The access. You're shutting me out and I don't understand why. I stayed calm. Kept my voice level. I'm not shutting you out. I'm managing my own affairs. There's a difference. But why? What happened? Did I do something? Are you angry with me? Yes, I wanted to shout. You treated me like a bank account with a pulse. You lied to me. You counted down the days until I died so you could cash in. But instead I said, this isn't about you, Daniel. It's about me taking ownership of my own life. That doesn't make sense. You've always included me in these things. I've always helped you manage. I don't need help managing, I interrupted. I'm perfectly capable. I never said you weren't capable. But it's smart to have someone else with access. What if something happens to you? What if there's an emergency? Then I have systems in place. Medical directives. Legal documentation. Professional advisors. His jaw tightened. Professional advisors who don't know you. Who don't care about you. I'm your son, Mom. I'm family. Exactly, I said quietly. You're my son. Not my financial manager. He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Who got to you? He finally asked. Was it someone from that painting class? One of your library friends? Did someone tell you I was trying to take advantage of you? And there it was again. The automatic assumption that I couldn't possibly make this decision on my own. That I must be influenced, manipulated, confused. Nobody got to me, Daniel. I made this decision myself. This isn't like you. How would you know what's like me? The words came out sharper than I intended. When's the last time you asked me about something that didn't relate to my house or my money or my estate planning? He flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I call you every week. I bring the kids over. I include you in everything. You keep tabs on me, I corrected. You monitor me. You've spent the last 8 years positioning yourself to inherit everything I have, and you thought I was too stupid or too trusting to notice. His face went pale. What are you talking about? I could have played the voicemail for him right then. Could have thrown his own words in his face. But something stopped me. Maybe I wanted to see if he'd come clean on his own. Maybe I was giving him one last chance to be the son I thought I'd raised. I'm talking about the fact that every conversation we have eventually circles back to my finances. I'm talking about how you always know exactly how much my house is worth, how much I have in retirement, how I should optimize my estate. I'm talking about how you've borrowed, and I'm using that word generously, over $100,000 from me in the last 6 years, and you thought I wouldn't keep track. He stood very still. You think I'm trying to steal from you? I think you've been preparing for my death like it's a business opportunity. Jesus Christ, Mom. That's insane. I'm your son. Everything I've done has been to help you, to make sure you're taken care of. Or to make sure you're taken care of when I'm gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Daniel's expression changed. Hardened. I can't believe this. I can't believe you'd think this about me. After everything I've done for you, all the time I've spent helping you since Dad died. Helping me or helping yourself? And this is how you repay me? By cutting me out? By treating me like some kind of criminal? I'm not treating you like anything, Daniel. I'm simply managing my own life. By excluding me from it. You excluded yourself, I said quietly. The moment you started seeing me as an asset instead of a person. He laughed. Actually laughed. But there was no humor in it. You know what? Fine. You want to handle everything yourself? You want to shut out the one person who's been there for you? Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you realize you can't manage everything alone. Don't call me when you need help. I won't, I said. He stared at me for a long moment. I watched something shift in his face. Something calculating. You're making a mistake, he said softly. A big mistake. And when you realize that, I hope it's not too late to fix it. It sounded like a warning. He left without another word. I locked the door behind him and sank to the floor, my back against the wood, and finally let myself cry. The next 2 weeks were psychological warfare. It started with the flowers. A massive bouquet arrived at my door with a card, "I'm sorry for getting upset. I love you. Let's talk when you're ready. Daniel." I threw them away. Then came the emails. Long, emotional messages about how much he valued our relationship, how he'd never meant to make me feel controlled, how he just wanted what was best for me. I didn't respond. Then the gifts for the grandkids arrived at my house, clearly meant for me to deliver. Art supplies. Books. Toys. Each with a note, "From Grandma, with love." I donated them all. Then his wife started calling. Leaving tearful voicemails about how the kids missed me, how Daniel was devastated, how families shouldn't let misunderstandings tear them apart. I deleted every message. But Daniel's masterstroke came 3 weeks after our confrontation. A letter arrived. Handwritten. 5 pages long. I almost didn't read it. But some sick part of me needed to see what he'd say. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. Every paragraph was calibrated for maximum emotional impact. He wrote about his childhood memories. About how I'd always been there for him. About how much Dad would have hated seeing us like this. He wrote about his fears for my future. About how he worried I was isolating myself. About how he'd talked to professionals who said sudden behavioral changes could be a sign of cognitive decline or outside influence. He wrote about the grandchildren. About how confused they were that Grandma didn't want to see them anymore. About how his daughter had cried asking what she'd done wrong. And then, in the final paragraph, he made his offer. "Mom, I don't know what I did to hurt you, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. I propose we sit down together, maybe with a family therapist or mediator, and talk through everything. No anger, no accusations. Just honesty. I love you more than anything in this world, and I can't stand the thought of losing you over a misunderstanding. Please. Give me a chance to fix this. Give us a chance to be a family again." I read it 3 times. And you know what? For about 30 seconds, it worked. For 30 seconds, I felt guilty. I felt like maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I was being too harsh. Then I played the voicemail again. "Keep her happy for another few years, maybe less if we're lucky." And I remembered, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was exactly what he meant. I burned the letter in my fireplace and watched every word turn to ash. The attack I wasn't prepared for came on a Saturday morning. I was in my garden, pulling weeds, when I heard children's voices. My grandchildren. I looked up and saw Daniel's car in my driveway. Before I could react, my 2 grandchildren came running around the side of the house, squealing with delight. "Grandma! Grandma! We missed you." They crashed into me with the full force of childhood joy, and my heart broke all over again. I hugged them. Of course I hugged them. They were innocent in all of this. Hi, babies, I whispered, holding them tight. I missed you too. Daniel appeared a moment later, his wife beside him. Both smiling. Both calm. We were in the neighborhood, Daniel said easily. The kids wanted to see you. I hope that's okay. It was a trap. A calculated, manipulative trap. If I sent them away, I was the cruel grandmother rejecting her grandchildren. If I let them stay, I was accepting Daniel back into my life on his terms. Of course, I said, because what else could I say? The kids dragged me inside to show me their drawings from school. I made them snacks. We sat in the living room, and for 20 minutes, it felt almost normal. Then Daniel asked if he could speak to me privately. Kids, go play in the backyard for a few minutes, his wife said brightly. They ran off, leaving the three of us in my living room. Mom, Daniel began, voice gentle. This has gone on long enough. Whatever's happened between us, we need to fix it. For them. He gestured toward the backyard where I could hear my grandchildren laughing. You're using your children as leverage, I said flatly. His wife gasped. How can you say that? We just wanted the kids to see their grandmother. Then you would have called first. You would have asked. You wouldn't have shown up unannounced and forced a situation where I either accept your terms or hurt my grandchildren. Daniel's patient mask slipped slightly. My terms? What terms, Mom? All I want is for us to be a family again. All I'm asking is that you trust me. That you let me back in. Let you back into what, exactly? My life? Or my bank accounts? This again, he muttered. Yes, this again. Because it's never stopped being about this. Every conversation, every visit, every concern you've expressed, it's all been about money. About access. About control. His wife leaned forward. Mrs. Harrison, I think you're confused about Daniel's intentions. He's been worried sick about you. We both have. Some of your recent decisions, they're not like you. And we're just concerned that maybe someone's influencing you, or maybe you're not seeing things clearly. There it was. The groundwork being laid for a competency challenge. I see things perfectly clearly, I said. Clearly enough to know that this visit isn't about the grandchildren. It's about manipulation. Daniel stood up. Fine. You want to know what this is really about? I'll tell you. You're cutting me out of your life for no reason. You're destroying our family over some paranoid fantasy that I'm after your money. And meanwhile, you're vulnerable. You're alone. And there are people out there who would love to take advantage of an isolated elderly woman with assets. Like you? I asked quietly. His face went red. I am your son. I have spent years taking care of you, supporting you, being there for you. And this is how you repay me? By treating me like a criminal? By keeping me from my own inheritance? And there it was. His own inheritance. Not my money. Not my assets. Not my life's work. His inheritance. Like I was already dead. I think you should leave, I said. Mom. Now. Take your children and leave my house. His wife opened her mouth to argue, but Daniel held up a hand. His expression had gone cold. Calculating. Fine, he said quietly. But I want you to know something. I've been patient. I've tried to do this the nice way. But if you continue down this path, if you continue to shut me out and make irrational decisions, I will have no choice but to take steps to protect you from yourself. Is that a threat? It's a promise, he said. I will not stand by and watch you destroy yourself or let someone manipulate you out of everything you've worked for. If you won't let me help you willingly, I'll find other ways. They left. I sat in my empty living room, listening to my grandchildren's confused questions floating in from the car as they drove away, and I knew what was coming next. He was going to try to have me declared incompetent. I didn't wait for the papers to arrive. I went on the offensive. I called Margaret, my attorney, and told her everything. She wasn't surprised. "I was wondering when this would happen," she said. Over the next week, I underwent every evaluation imaginable. Cognitive testing with a neuropsychologist. Full physical examination. Psychiatric evaluation. Mental status exam. I met with my primary care physician and asked her to document my medical history, my current health status, and her professional opinion on my mental capacity. I gathered character references from friends, from my painting instructor, from the library director where I volunteered. I documented every interaction with Daniel. Every call, every text, every email, every visit. And I prepared for war. The petition arrived 4 weeks later. Daniel had filed for guardianship, claiming I was vulnerable to exploitation, showing signs of cognitive decline, and making decisions inconsistent with my previous character and judgment. He'd included evidence, the sudden account changes, the cutting him out of my life, the refusal to see my grandchildren, a lie, he'd prevented that, not me, and statements from concerned family members about my erratic behavior. It was thorough. It was calculated. And it almost worked. Almost. The hearing was set for 3 weeks out. In that time, Daniel launched a full-scale assault on my credibility. He called my friends, expressing concern about my mental state, asking if they'd noticed any changes in my behavior. He contacted my doctor's office, illegally, it turned out, trying to access my medical records. He showed up at my house twice more, bringing witnesses each time, trying to document me refusing family contact. He even posted on social media about the importance of recognizing elder abuse and cognitive decline, never mentioning me by name, but everyone who knew us knew who he was talking about. I was painted as the confused, stubborn elderly woman who didn't know what was best for herself. He was the concerned son, just trying to protect his mother. The narrative was perfect. Except for one thing. The voicemail. I'd saved it. Backed it up in 3 different places. Transcribed it. Had it authenticated by a digital forensics expert Margaret hired. And I was saving it for the hearing. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. More intimate. Which somehow made it worse. Daniel sat at one table with his attorney, an expensive-looking man in a sharp suit. I sat at another table with Margaret. Between us, a judge who would decide whether I was competent to manage my own life. Daniel's attorney went first. He painted a picture of a woman in decline. Someone who'd suddenly and irrationally cut her loving son out of her life. Someone making rash financial decisions. Someone clearly influenced by outside parties taking advantage of her grief and loneliness. He called Daniel to the stand. And I'll give my son credit, he was good. He talked about how worried he was. How he'd noticed small changes, forgetfulness, confusion, paranoia. How he'd tried to help but I'd refused. How he was just trying to protect me. He cried. Actual tears. Talking about how much he loved me. How much it hurt to be shut out. How scared he was for my safety. The judge looked sympathetic. Then it was Margaret's turn. She called the neuropsychologist who'd evaluated me. He testified that my cognitive function was not only normal for my age but actually above average. She called my physician. She testified that I was in excellent health, showed no signs of cognitive decline, and had full decision-making capacity. She called my friends. They testified that I was social, engaged, active, and perfectly rational. She submitted my documented history of managing my own finances successfully for 8 years since my husband's death. The judge's expression started to shift. Then Margaret said, "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a voicemail message that I believe is relevant to this case." Daniel's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Margaret played the voicemail for the entire courtroom. Daniel's voice, casual and clear, "I just need to keep her happy for another few years, maybe less if we're lucky. Then we're set. The house alone is worth over 600 grand." The silence that followed was deafening. The judge looked at Daniel. "Mr. Harrison, is that your voice on that recording?" Daniel's face had gone white. That's taken out of context. What context would make that statement appropriate? The judge asked. I was talking about estate planning. About being prepared. I didn't mean. You said, if we're lucky, referring to your mother's death, the judge interrupted. And you specifically mentioned the value of her assets. Mr. Harrison, this doesn't sound like concern for your mother's well-being. This sounds like concern for your inheritance. Your Honor, Daniel's attorney jumped in, a single conversation, possibly misinterpreted. It's not misinterpreted, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. The judge nodded. Mrs. Harrison, would you like to address the court? I stood up. Margaret tried to stop me, this wasn't in our plan, but I needed to say this. Your Honor, that voicemail isn't out of context. It's exactly what my son meant. For 8 years since my husband died, my son has been systematically positioning himself to inherit everything I have. He's borrowed over $120,000 from me under false pretenses. He's lied about emergencies to get money. He's tried to get access to my accounts. And when I finally set boundaries, when I finally said no, he did exactly what he threatened. He tried to have me declared incompetent so he could control my assets himself. I looked at Daniel. He couldn't meet my eyes. I love my son, I continued, and my voice broke. I love him more than anything in this world. But love doesn't mean letting someone exploit you. Love doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity to maintain a relationship. And love definitely doesn't mean giving someone control over your life because they're counting on you to die. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Mr. Harrison, I'm dismissing this petition. Your mother has demonstrated clear mental capacity, sound judgment, and frankly, more patience than you deserve. Furthermore, I'm ordering that you are to have no contact with your mother regarding financial matters and no access to any of her accounts or legal documents. If I see you in my courtroom again on a similar matter, I will consider it harassment. She banged her gavel. It was over. I found out later, through a mutual friend Daniel didn't know we shared, what had really been going on. Daniel's business was failing. Had been for 2 years. He'd taken out multiple loans, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from friends and family. He'd mortgaged his house twice. And he'd done it all based on the assumption that he'd inherit enough from me to cover everything. He'd literally bet his financial future on my death. The investments he'd pitched me didn't exist. He'd used that money to cover debt payments. The emergencies? Most were fabricated. The concern about my estate planning? He'd been trying to figure out exactly how much he'd inherit and when. My son had spent years lying to me, manipulating me, and planning his life around the money I'd die leaving behind. And when I'd disrupted that plan, he'd tried to take control by force. I sent him one final letter. No lawyer this time. Just me. I wrote. Daniel. I'm not writing this to hurt you. I'm writing it because I need you to understand something. You were right when you said you're not responsible for taking care of me. You're not. I can take care of myself. But I'm also not responsible for funding your mistakes, paying your debts, or serving as your retirement plan. For 8 years, I thought we had a relationship. I thought you visited because you loved me, called because you cared, included me because I mattered. Now I know differently. I know that every conversation was transactional. Every visit was surveillance. Every expression of concern was really about protecting your future payout. I know that you loved my money more than you loved me. And that breaks my heart in ways I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. But here's what I want you to know, the door isn't permanently closed. If you ever want a real relationship, one built on honesty, respect, and genuine care rather than financial calculation, I'm here. If you ever want to apologize, not for getting caught but for what you did, I'll listen. If you ever want to be my son again instead of my heir, we can try. But it has to be real. It has to be honest. And it has to acknowledge the damage you've done. Until then, I'm protecting myself. Not because I don't love you, but because I do love myself. And I deserve better than what you've given me. I hope someday you understand that. I hope someday you become the man I thought you were. But if you don't, I'll survive. I've survived worse. Love, Mom. I never got a response. That was 18 months ago. I'm still here. Still healthy. Still independent. I've completely restructured my estate. The bulk of it is going to charities, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students in my husband's name, a women's shelter, an environmental conservation organization. I've set up a trust for my grandchildren's education, one Daniel can't access or control. They'll get it when they turn 18, regardless of what their father says or does. I've maintained some contact with the kids, carefully and ethically. I send cards on birthdays. I set up a separate email account they can reach me through when they're old enough. I'm not using them as pawns, and I'm not forcing them to choose sides. But Daniel? I haven't spoken to him since the hearing. He made one attempt, about 6 months ago. Showed up at my house with what looked like a prepared speech about reconciliation. I listened for 5 minutes. It was all the same manipulation, the same calculated emotion. I asked him one question: have you paid back any of the $120,000 you borrowed from me? He said, that's what this is about? Money? I closed the door. Because no, it's not about the money. It's about the fact that he still doesn't get it. He still thinks I'm being unreasonable. He still thinks he's the victim. He still thinks if he just finds the right words, the right approach, the right leverage, he can get back into my will. He doesn't understand that I don't trust him anymore. And trust, once broken like that, doesn't heal just because someone decides they want it to. I've built a new life. I'm closer with my friends now than I've ever been. I host book club at my house once a month. I've taken up pottery in addition to watercolor painting. I volunteer more hours at the library. I started a blog about financial independence for widows. Turns out there are a lot of women in my situation, women whose children started circling the moment their spouses died, treating them like ATMs with expiration dates. I'm not lonely. I'm not isolated. I'm just done being someone's retirement plan. And you know what? I'm okay. Some days are harder than others. I see mothers and sons in the grocery store, laughing together, and my chest aches with what I've lost. But then I remember, I didn't lose a son. I lost the illusion of having a son who loved me unconditionally. The real Daniel, the one who existed all along, underneath the performance, he's still out there. Still lying, I imagine. Still calculating. Still waiting for me to die so he can collect. But he's not waiting for me anymore. He's waiting for someone I used to be. Someone who didn't know any better. Someone who confused generosity with love and boundaries with cruelty. That woman doesn't exist anymore. I killed her the day I sent that 2-word text. And I don't regret it for a second. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your life, maybe a family member, maybe a friend, who made you feel like you were only valuable for what you could give them? Have you ever realized that a relationship you thought was built on love was actually built on transaction? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and keeping the peace? If you have, drop a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Because here's what I've learned: protecting yourself from exploitation isn't selfish. Setting boundaries with people who see you as a resource isn't cruel. And choosing your own dignity over someone else's expectations isn't wrong. Even when that someone is your own child. Even when it breaks your heart. Even when it costs you everything you thought you had. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. And I'd rather live with the woman who stood up for herself than the woman who let her own son exploit her until the day she died. I'm 74 years old. I'm healthy, independent, and financially secure. And I got that way by finally learning a lesson it took me 73 years to understand. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's just another word for being used. And I'm done being used. My name is Eleanor Harrison. And this is what it looks like when you finally choose yourself. Even when it costs you everything. Even when it hurts like hell. Even when the person you're protecting yourself from is the person you love most in the world. This is what it looks like to survive your own child's betrayal. And to come out the other side still standing. Still strong. Still here. And that right there, is worth more than any inheritance could ever be. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go protect yours.